Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include an indie game dev getting screwed over by a giant weapons manufacturer, Activision Blizzard employees going on strike and trying to actively unionize, the big last Epoch ARPG update, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now, before we move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, Squarespace. I built my website, Riker.com, using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself, quickly and easily, and with zero education in the field, all thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. Watch how easily I update my Diablo 3 page to embed my latest Season 25 videos. Everything was set up with some templates that I was able to easily customize to my needs. No knowledge of coding required. You can even connect your social media profiles to automatically push website content to your socials, and even set up members-only areas with exclusive content. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. And Squarespace is currently offering my viewers 10% off your first purchase with them. Just go to squarespace.com/Riker, or click the link in the description to sign up and start building your online presence. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER. And use code Riker to get started today. In our first story, the Game Awards took place this week, which, in addition to handing out awards in various categories to video games, also is a venue at which game trailers premiere. The winner of Game of the Year was It Takes Two, but I encourage you to check out my full video on the Game Awards for an overview of all the winners and all the game reveals. Another noteworthy reveal during the Game Awards was for Lost Ark. We now have an official release date for the Western release, February 11th. In other news, Bioware, in celebration of Dragon Age Day, which took place December 4th, and began as a fan celebration years ago but was ultimately officially recognized by Bioware, Bioware released a blog post in which, among other things, they reassured fans that they are still, quote, hard at work on building the next single-player focused experience for Dragon Age. The Dragon Age team added that they'll be able to talk more about what they're working on next year. This comes after some recent doom and gloom headlines involving another creative director on Dragon Age 4 leaving the company. In other news, indie game dev Ward B is alleging that Russian weapons manufacturer Kalashnikov Concern, as in the AK-47 or Automatic Kalashnikova, stole their weapon design. You see, the story begins with Ward B developing a game, Oceanic, and to build hype and raise funds, they were sharing their progress, which involved publicly showcasing some very detailed weapons designs. Then in early 2020, as reported by IGN, a contractor for Kalashnikov reached out to Ward B, asking for permission to use one of their shotgun designs for a real-life gun and have Ward B use Kalashnikov branding in their game. The contractor confirmed this with IGN, adding that the conversations were preliminary. Ward B was excited. They were just a little indie dev and they were promised recognition and the ability to use the Kalashnikov branding in their game, which they believed would help bring attention to their product. Ward B told the contractor that they'd be happy to sign the deal, but the contract never came. But one day in August of 2020, Ward B noticed that Kalashnikov released a new shotgun that bore striking similarities to their shotgun design, including some non-functional decorations that were Ward B's signature included in all their weapon designs. The contractor claims that they abandoned the Ward B plan and instead hired another contractor to design the weapon from scratch. But by September 2020, Ward B sent Kalashnikov a cease and desist. Kalashnikov neither complied nor replied, until another month later when Ward B issued DMCA takedowns for online posts featuring the new Kalashnikov gun. At that point, Kalashnikov asked Ward B to withdraw their takedown notices, insisting that their design was used legally. Then, earlier this year, the video game Escape from Tarkov introduced the new Kalashnikov gun in an update, presumably as part of a licensed deal. Ward B reached out to the devs of the video game to tell them, hey, you're making unauthorized use of our weapon designs, but Ward B never got a reply. Now, IGN got hold of some leaked conversations that showed the contractor from Kalashnikov reaching out to the original artist that created the weapon design for Ward B, asking, quote, "So did they pay for your shotgun, or we can buy it to stop the conflict with them shortly? Because there are lawyers connected from both sides now, and truly it seems like a spoiling of time." Now, while not necessarily an admission of guilt, trying to retroactively buy the design away from Ward B in order to stop them from pursuing legal action seems, at the very least, underhanded. Ward B, however, held the rights to the artist's design, so this was not possible anyway. IGN then got a hold of other leaked conversations showing the Russian contractor reaching out to another artist, linking to that artist the Ward B design and asking the artist to make them something similar. Apparently, even telling the artist that it would be okay if they just literally took Ward B's renders and put the Kalashnikov logo on it. When IGN asked the contractor about these messages, the contractor did not respond. And while not replying to journalists is never in itself an admission of wrongdoing, it is noteworthy that the contractor was talking to IGN before IGN asked about these messages. Now, at this point today, Ward B has given up. Any legal action will be too difficult and too expensive due to Kalashnikov being in Russia, and I've heard legal experts weigh in and say that it isn't worth it for the indie devs to pursue the case. It's not worth their time or money. While an unfortunate end to the story, all Ward B wanted out of this deal was exposure. They weren't asking for money, so let's give them a follow on Twitter to show them some support. Link in the description. On to an Activision Blizzard update. Last Friday, 12 QA testers out of around 350 employees at Raven Software, the Activision subsidiary studio that helped make Call of Duty Warzone, found out that they would no longer have jobs by the end of January. Raven studio head Brian Raffel told employees that he didn't consider the terminations to be layoffs, but rather they were just not renewing the temporary employment agreements of these 12 workers. In protest, at least 200 Activision Blizzard workers staged virtual walkouts this week. Speaking to Kotaku, a representative of the protesters stated that their demands are to have every member of the Raven Software QA team, including those being let go, be offered full-time contracts. Austin O'Brien, associate community manager at Raven Software, offered further insight on Twitter. He stated, quote, "I am gutted right now. My friends in QA at Raven were promised for months that Activision was working towards a pay restructure to increase their wages. Today, one by one, valuable members of the team were called into meetings and told they were being let go. If it isn't clear, this is baloney. It's unfair to these people to string them along, promising something better, and then let them go. I am infuriated right now." Allegedly, the remaining QA staff will be receiving a raise of about $1.50, since, money was just freed up in the budget. In other Activision Blizzard news, the Game Awards host Jeff Knightley had confirmed in the days leading up to the Game Awards that Activision Blizzard would not be a part of the Game Awards. Apart from their existing nominations, that is. Call of Duty was still nominated for an award, but no Activision Blizzard game trailers were shown. It remains unclear whether this was a punishment in any way, whether Activision Blizzard was scheduled to have any trailers shown to begin with, or whether Activision Blizzard decided to withdraw on their own. All of that is unknown. But Knightley did open the Game Awards with a general statement in support of game developers and condemning harassment without naming names. Then on Thursday of this week, the ABK Workers Alliance announced the initiation of a strike and allegedly began handing out union cards. Now, my understanding is in the US, legally, if 30% of the Activision Blizzard workforce signs these union cards, this would force a company-wide vote to unionize. And this would mark a first in the video game industry. The ABK Workers Alliance encouraged anyone who desires to support them to consider donating to their strike fund, which, as of this recording, has received over $200,000 out of its $1 million goal. The funds are said to be used first and foremost to assist with wages during the strike. Meanwhile, former Blizzard Versailles employees are continuing their fight against the studio's closure. Starting in 2018, 400 people at the Blizzard Versailles office in France were made redundant until the branch was eventually closed in 2020. The thing is, France has some pretty strict labor laws, and the French Labor Inspection Agency was claiming that Blizzard's financial performance did not justify the extent of the layoffs. At the time, Blizzard justified the layoffs by saying they needed to maintain their competitiveness in a changing market. But at the time, they had record-breaking financial results. A verdict in this case is expected in a matter of weeks. On to some last Epoch news. Patch 0.8.4, the Eternal Legends update, is now live, and it's a big one. This patch introduces the dungeon system, with the first of many dungeons planned to be added to the game. Dungeons are side content with unique rewards that first require you to find a dungeon key before you can run the dungeon. In every dungeon, you're going to get a dungeon-specific usable ability that you need to use to overcome challenges specific to that dungeon. For instance, inside the first dungeon, you'll have to use Temporal Shift to swap between the future and the past. At the end of the dungeon, you get access to a special tool that you can use to craft a legendary item, a new item type introduced to the game. Legendary items are created by combining unique items and exalted items, and this should serve as a means of making some of the less used uniques useful in the endgame. This patch also completely overhauls the Druid class and its transformations. In addition to the Werebear form and the Spriggan form, we also now get a third Druid form, the Swarm Blade. Each form has unique powers, and one of the Swarm Blades is summoning hives that spawn locusts. The patch also has an overhaul to the crafting system that introduces new chase items and adds 20 new unique and set items. Full patch notes can be found in the description below. On to Diablo news, starting with Diablo 2 Resurrected. A new patch released this week that fixed an issue that the previous patch introduced. When assassins or sorceresses would teleport, any traps or hydras they had deployed would teleport with them. They should not have been doing that, though it did make for an interesting meta change. However, the patch this week fixed it to keep the traps and hydras where they were deployed. The patch also introduced the ability to bind Force Move to the mouse wheel, which is a wonderful change. I was so disappointed when we got Force Move added, which was great, and then I couldn't bind it to mouse scroll wheel, which is what I typically do. Seriously, folks, if you have never tried setting Force Move to your mouse scroll wheel up and down, you gotta try it. You just keep your finger running it along the mouse scroll wheel, and your character moves to wherever you're pointing. In classic Diablo 2, a ladder reset happened yesterday. No news yet on when the first ladder season in D2R will start, however. On to Diablo 3 news. Patch 272 went live, as did Season 25. We got a stealth nerf to one of the core attributes of Soul Shards, the elemental damage they deal, but this is actually good. It affords more viable options within that specific attribute slot. If you're wondering what build to play in Season 25, be sure to check out my tier list video, and we've also got build guides on many of the builds you may want to run this season, because that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out our last video in which we discussed the awesome new Diablo 2 patch that introduces the biggest quality of life feature the game has received in 20 years. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.